How's it going, comic book fans? Welcome back to another minute-ish review on Cafeteria Drops. Today's review is a milestone in the making. A chain breaker level review. A review of a comic from Valiant Comics and Alien Books. A review of a comic that is actually, wait for it, good. Yes, you heard that right. You're not imagining things, and I haven't misspoken. Valiant has released a comic book that has a cohesive story, is entertaining, and has awesome art. It's the trifecta of comic book quality. Of course, it's the one and only Manowar Invictus. Is the comic good just because of how bad everything has been lately? Or does it stand on its own? Stay tuned to find out. Let's start by taking a look at the narrative of Manowar Invictus, issue number 1. Before I get into discussing the story of this 4-issue limited series, I just want to say that it is refreshing. So refreshing to see a quality book put out by Valiant and Alien Books. I wanted to state this up front because the past couple of weeks has been overly negative, especially for Valiant fans, and that includes me. However, rest assured, Manowar Invictus number 1 is worth a read. Now let's get into what's currently happening in the world of everyone's favorite Visigoth. Writing duties for this series are remaining with Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, thankfully. This series is also a direct continuation of the excellent Liam Sharp run of Manowar Unconquered. Auric, Thyra, and a group of Novus Romanus exiles are now back on the planet Scythia. The book opens with Auric's group on a hunting mission as they're trying to just survive the harsh climate on the planet, before making their next move against the Space Romans and Ursus Nox. After killing a large boar creature, we get these awesome scenes that exemplify Auric perfectly, carrying massive cuts of meat back to camp from their kill. Then we're introduced to one of the main conflicts of this series. Auric and Thyra have different motivations for the future of this group. Auric wants to take on the Novus Romanus, rescue Namane, the Soothsayer, and eradicate the group altogether. Thyra is more level-headed in this case and doesn't want to take them on initially. She says it's a suicide mission because they're just too powerful at this point. With Auric and Thyra working together now, I feel like this disagreement will rear its ugly head throughout this limited series. But after their disagreement, we get a surprising cameo, tying this series to the Valiant's limited series that was previously released this month. A light appears in front of Auric and a portal opens only for Ivar, the Time Walker, to appear. He begs Auric to return to Earth, but Auric takes comfort in the fact that they think he's dead and refuses to return. Later on that night, we were also introduced to another subplot that could prove to be interesting to follow as well. Shanhara, the Exo armor, is damaged severely and has gone silent. As Auric seeks guidance from Shanhara, he is ultimately left with nothing. Nothing's coming out of the armor. We also get a scene of Namane, the Soothsayer, possessing a villager and trying to communicate with Auric, to plead for help. She begs for him to rescue her, but only at the behest of Ursus Nox, so a trap has been set. The issue concludes with Auric and Thyra rushing into space to take on Ursus Nox and rescue Namane. But a mysterious space traveler shows up who knows Auric. Who's this new character? Was their meetup a coincidence? I guess we won't find out until issue number 2. Okay, I'm happy to say that this issue serves nicely as a transitional narrative between the previous run of Exo and this new one. Cloonan and Conrad also do a bit of world building on Scythia, and the familiar characters are handled accurately and consistently, relating to what has came before. The cameo from Ivar is also an interesting touch and shows that Valiant is continuing to construct an interconnected universe for these titles. The pacing of the issue is also a positive, and puts the experience and skill of the writers on full display. The aspect of this issue that stands out to me most is the familiarity of the characters. These two writers already know the ins and outs of EXO and all the characters who will appear, and they are treated properly and with respect in this issue. The writers actually understand the characters within this book, and it shows. The story is cohesive, it ebbs and flows nicely, and is a pleasure to read. Whew. And I am relieved to be saying that. Thank you, Valiant and Alien Books, for the roller coaster of a ride for the past few weeks, but we're no longer scraping the bottom of the barrel. We're out of the barrel and harvesting the good stuff now. Alright, let's take a look at the quality of the visuals for EXO Manowar Invictus #1. The team bringing this story to life visually consists of Fernando Hines Furukawa on pencils and inks and Nobi on coloring duties. Now, when I first saw the preview pages for EXO Manowar Invictus, I was definitely not a fan. I mean, the previous run was painted by the amazing Liam Sharp. How could these guys possibly measure up? And not only that, Furukawa's art style leans heavily into Eastern influences like manga. Like I mentioned in my previous video, I do not like when American comics chase trends like implementing manga art styles into their stories. However, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I like the manga art style of this issue. The kinetic nature of the art is top-notch, with character movement feeling weighty and the visuals having an overall energetic feel. Locations are drawn with care and a level of detail that has been missing from many of Valiant's recent releases, including their big team-up title, The Valiants. Additionally, characters are consistently drawn and don't change looks between panels. And get this, Furukawa is not afraid to draw hands. What a novel endeavor in a comic book. And I also have to mention how awesome Ursus Nox looks in this issue. He is surely going to be a worthy opponent once that inevitable battle between Auric and him occurs. I just have to say that I'm pleasantly surprised by the visuals here. I really didn't expect to like them at all. Before I move on to colors, I also have to mention my favorite page in this issue, where Ivar makes an appearance. The structure of this page and the setup of panels is a nice display of the creativity and skill of Furukawa in illustration. This is easily one of my favorite pages in a Valiant comic recently and exemplifies the fact that once you learn the rules, it's then your duty to break them. I'm certainly a fan for sure. Next, let's take a look at Nobi's colors. And I'm glad to report yet again that these are another positive aspect of this issue. However, it is interesting to me how a colorist's technique and quality of coloring can differ from issue to issue. In previous series like The Valiants, I was not too impressed with his work. However, in EXO Manowar Invictus, Nobi seems to do a great job with rendering locations, characters, and the action in a skillful manner. This is how it should be done. The colors complement the atmosphere and feeling within each scene, and Nobi does it with skill. Light sources are also rendered properly with light reflecting and cascading realistically around each panel. Essentially, the color work fits perfectly within the confines of Furukawa's artwork. Simply put, I really enjoyed just looking at this issue. Many of the panels are visually striking and the action is framed in a visually interesting way. Overall, a big thank you goes out to Fernando Hines Furukawa and Nobi for doing this character justice and making me actually want to read issue #2. Before we conclude this video, I also want to compliment Valiant and Alien Books for the excellent and premium quality of the trade dress for EXO Manowar Invictus #1. Alright, let's sum up my thoughts on EXO Manowar Invictus issue #1. I'm happy to report that the pros of this issue are numerous. The story is interesting and effectively bridges the last series and this one. Characters are written in a way that does them justice. The art is surprisingly good and the colors are awesome. And lastly, the trade dress is yet again excellent. The one con of this issue, if you really even want to call it a con, is that it's transitional in nature, and really nothing else. Valiant, if you're watching this video, thank you. Thank you for doing these characters justice. I had almost lost hope on how the road to resurgence was going to go, and my hope has been renewed with this issue. So that wraps up my review of EXO Manowar Invictus issue #1, and I just have to say that it's refreshing to finally read something from Valiant and Alien Books that fires on all cylinders. I'm certainly excited to see where this series goes over its 4-issue run. And lastly, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought about X-O Manowar Invictus issue number 1. Check your pull lists, and I'll see you next week for the release of Bloodshot Unleashed Reloaded number 3.